Welcome back.
To Immersive Reactions.
We're doing a deep dive on Terminator 2 Judgment Day. It's just a little thing. I was thinking about doing behind the scenes, but then I was like, I'll click on something else. We'll do something else. Because we'd been doing behind the scenes and stuff, so I want to see what this video is about. It says the story production of the Terminator, how it was produced. So we will see how that is made. If you want us to react to anything else on YouTube about Terminator 2 Judgment Day and have a video in mind, let us know. All of our
reactions,
all of our deep dives, all of our reactions will be in the cheapest tier of the members, which is like $1.99, I think, and the Patreon is $3.
Mm-hmm.
And those will always be there. They'll be early, and all of our reactions are there as well. For all of our channels, we have 3 channels currently. And if you can't do that, please subscribe so we can keep doing these deep dives and stuff like that. Because I like getting into the meta stuff and like really figuring out things about the movies that we watch, not just reacting to movie after movie. Let's go.
Mom, are you okay?
Come with me if you want to live.
It's okay, Mom. He's here to help.
Make sure you go and check out this guy's video. Leave him a like.
We made a huge video exploring the
watch the video muted while you watch ours.
And the immense production process of the first Terminator film. Links in
oh,
the
that's neat how they did it before.
Forward, Terminator 2 has long been regarded by many as one of the best action flicks of all time, and one of the greatest sequels ever made. In it, an advanced cybernetic assassin, identical to the one who failed to kill Sarah Connor in the first film, must now protect her son from a more advanced and powerful Terminator. By looking closer,
was a good
we can really appreciate the finesse which James Cameron and his team brought to the project, both in the narrative and technical department. And given the very dark fate of where the series now is, it's no wonder why this movie has stood the test of time. Hey guys, what's happening?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are saying.
Explained.
The later movies are not as good, but we're not going to rule them out.
James Cameron's
we'll watch a bad movie.
It doesn't matter. Blockbuster, starring Linda Hamilton, Edward Furlong, Joe Morton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Robert Patrick as the T-1000.
T-1000, advanced prototype.
The T-1000, also known as the Prototype Series 1000 Terminator, is essentially an android shape-shifting assassin sent back in time to kill John Connor. Created by the franchise's main antagonist, Skynet, the T-1000 is described in Terminator.
I wonder why they didn't send him to begin with.
Metal mimetic
in the first movie
that it could manipulate to assume various forms. I talk about Skynet and the T-800 in other videos listed in my massive Terminator playlist, which I'll be leaving links to below.
That's a massive playlist.
Yes, it is.
You guys check them out. With that being said, aside from being able to camouflage itself by assuming the appearance of nondescript objects and the likeness of humans it terminated, the T-1000
it's a copy-paste
enabled it to form its hands into stabbing blades, slit through physical openings by oozing its liquid form, and instantly reform itself from any physical damage. In the prologue of the film's novelization, it's further explained that the T-1000 was created through nanotechnology and was a nanomorph, able to scan the molecular structure of whatever it's touching, before successfully mimicking its visual appearance. In Terminator 2, the T-1000's default form was portrayed by the legendary Robert Patrick, while other actors portrayed the T-1000 in the disguise of specific characters. The infiltration unit was described as a technological leap over the 800 series Terminator.
You mean more advanced than you, Mark?
Yes, and mimetic polyalloy.
What the hell does that mean?
Liquid metal.
As mentioned before, it can use its ability to quickly liquefy and assume forms in innovative and surprising ways, including fitting through narrow openings, morphing its arms into solid metal tools or bladed weapons, walking through prison bars, flattening itself and imitating the pattern and texture of the ground.
That's the part that just mind blows me.
Yeah,
and it just
like coming out of the floor.
Yes, it just melts and it comes together. Melts like all kinds of forms.
Yeah, it just makes it even more alien than a robot.
Yes.
It could also change its surface color and texture to convincingly simulate flesh, clothing, and other non-metallic materials.
I love the idea.
It was capable of accurately mimicking voices as well, including the ability to
improvement upon
a relatively small voice sample
the original movie.
A wide array of words or inflections as required. However, its morphing abilities were limited by complexity, mass, and volume, and as such, it could not transform into complex machines with mechanical moving parts or chemical fuels like guns or bombs. Its volume also prevented it from taking the form of smaller objects like a pack of cigarettes, although it was capable of impersonating larger people, most likely by simply making its interior hollow. Like all the Terminators featured in the series, the T-1000 possessed superhuman strength, while relatively equal to the T-800, thanks to its morphing abilities and immunity to mechanical
it's a
damage.
really good
effects
for
hand-to-hand combat,
1990.
despite its more slender frame and lack of mass compared to its predecessor. It
Like
can
the Terminator is
enough to catch up
badass already, and then we have
away from
Yeah.
it, though
a
it was
T-1000 that just morphs and changes and all. Whew.
You okay? Fine. Say, that's a nice bike.
I like how
Get out.
I'm taking this.
It is effectively impervious to physical injury, and any damage to its body would only momentarily stagger it for as long as it took to repair the wound or deformation. Bullet wounds were a minor inconvenience. However, a high kinetic impact from a shotgun blast or a large explosion would knock it out for a few moments before it could recover. If a part of its body is detached, it will liquefy and flow back into the T-1000's body, with its detached nanoparts able to track the core of the body from a great distance. In the prologue to the novel adaptation, it's explained that the T-1000 was able to completely reform and reshape itself at will, due to its cells having been programmed by Skynet, with onboard nanotechnologies. The unit is also not specifically designed to encounter other
my whole
Terminators,
brain.
and has little knowledge of their diagnostics, and this allowed the T-800 to take it by surprise. In the film, the T-1000 forcefully shut the T-800 down, but did not know of the older model's emergency reboot power mode, which enabled it to get back up.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Its weaknesses appeared to be extreme temperatures, similar to those that would have been used during its creation. In the film, when it was frozen solid from a coating of liquid nitrogen, it could not move. It was then shot by the Terminator and split into several pieces. However, the heat from a nearby crucible thawed out the individual pieces, allowing it to liquefy moments before the T-1000 began
that was a cool
reforming its
part,
body.
I have to say.
After it was hit with a grenade launcher, it was so distorted and off balance from the gap in its torso that it slipped and fell into a molten steel vat, which caused it to shapeshift uncontrollably into its human victims.
All
the machine
yes,
was
the
then seen
victims.
turning
That was
itself
like the
inside out, trying to shield itself, but was permanently destroyed when the searing
every
heat
single person
disassembled its
it killed and
nanotechnological
harmed.
cells on a microscopic level. The extended edition of Judgment Day also contained additional scenes in the steel foundry.
Yeah, someone said
showing
about
that
the extended
damaging effects of
edition
being
too.
Frozen, shattered, and thawed caused the T-1000 to glitch, and as a result, the assassin began to uncontrollably morph, matching its surface with objects it came into contact with against its will. This glitch enabled John to see through its nose when it impersonated his mother, as its feet took on the color and texture of the grated metal floor on which it stood. Interestingly,
that's
the
a
DVD also contains a
big
deleted scene
point
where
that they left
T-1000
out.
used its hands to scan John Connor's bedroom for genetic
But
and
I guess it's
psychological
like
information, an ability it had in common with
Whoa.
the
A
TX
thing
and
where-
Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. The T-1000
Without,
series were subtle infiltrators
some
that would
context,
often accomplish their goals
wouldn't
through
make a lot of
cunning
sense
and
to people
deception,
if-
instead of
unless
the
they're, like,
brute force
directly
and
told
extreme
it's
violence used by
malfunctioning.
the T-800s.
Now
The
that it,
T2,
like,
it disguised itself as a
got
police
frozen.
officer to gain trust and access information, and its benign, friendly face enabled it to gain the information it
It's a
needed to
huge
locate
upgrade
John
compared
Connor.
to the Terminator.
Photograph of John.
Yeah, sure, hold on.
He's a good-looking boy. Do you mind if I keep this picture?
No, go on.
In the
Like, you
end,
shoot the
despite not
Terminator
succeeding
or
in this
crush it,
mission, the
or anything else like
T-1000
that,
was one
poof,
of the
you're
most
done. But this
efficient
thing can
infiltrator
just
units, as it
poof,
was
and
able to
then
successfully
come back
pass as a
together,
human, using a
get
large
blown
repertoire
up,
of emotional
come back
expressions
together.
and interpersonal skills that the earlier Terminators lacked.
That's good. Maybe you could practice in front of a mirror or something.
That's part of the extended too. That wasn't in both.
Or is it up in the future as a message to her? The future's not set. There's no fate but what we make for ourselves.
T2 has three key narrative beats. First, a Terminator is once again sent back from the future, but this time is tasked with protecting John Connor. And with the Terminator defending John from an upgraded Terminator model, the machine slowly morphs into a father figure for John. Second, Sarah Connor masterminds a plan to stop Skynet from ever being created by killing its creator, Miles Dyson. This transforms Sarah into a ruthless killing machine, contrasting her previous persona. She almost perfectly reverses the arc found in the T-101. Throughout the first film, she was emotionally active, both in terms of passion and fear, but in this film, she's become cold and utilitarian,
Yes,
seeing John's
I've seen
survival
that.
as a must, not as a
Especially in
result
that
of
scene.
loving or cherishing him. Instead of being a helpless waitress who's thrown into this crazy world of robots and nuclear holocaust, she has a much more active role in her own fate this time round. She goes further than this when she decides to take down Dyson, essentially transforming herself into a human Terminator, dressing in military attire
I think
and packing weapons.
like the in between the movie is just so dramatically changing for her, like after what happened.
Together and blow up his life's work. In this way, the film is as much about her redemption as it is the Terminator's.
Your heart and your mind are in here.
I'm sorry.
About spending some time with your other babies.
Interestingly, Miles Dyson also subverts the very idea of a villainous mastermind that needs to be defeated. Although he could be blamed for creating Skynet and setting the cogs in motion, which result in the future war, the Dyson we see doesn't scream human extinction.
I feel like it took a lot for
we see
him
this.
to be able to just demolish
He's simply a man working
everything
tirelessly
he's
with
been
his
working
passion.
on.
And when told about the ramifications of his breakthroughs, he opts to upend his life's work for the greater good.
Yeah, I think he
A lot of
did.
years on this thing.
I think he was a little skeptical. I don't really want to do it
With the
at certain
T-1000
points.
ruthlessly
It's
pursuing
like
them
I've been
along
working
the
so
way,
hard,
they
I
managed
have
to
to do it.
Positive they did not show that part.
Himself to wipe out any trace of Skynet in the present, stopping the future war from ever happening.
Who sent you?
You did.
This, of course, is paradoxical. Future John, in the midst of the 21st century war, sends back Arnold's T-101 to protect his younger self, who then succeeds in destroying the building blocks of Skynet and the Terminators. It's the classic grandfather paradox, with Arnold essentially coming back in time to kill his grandfather, the original Skynet microchip.
Yeah, you kill your grandfather, you don't exist.
How could he have ever existed to come back in time?
You're talking about things that I haven't done yet in the past tense.
Okay, this is my personal idea. I don't know what he's going to say, but this is my personal idea. It's either a paradox, which means it just doesn't make sense. Because if you go back and change something, fluidly it doesn't work because you'll disappear. If you prevented your grandfather from existing and having your mother, then you would disappear at the moment that happened. You would not exist in the future. To fix that idea so it works is you make it so there's different realities that are simultaneously happening that are all the same. It's the same thing happening. Like in an infinite universe, there's going to be a repetition, and the chances of infinite repetition means something exactly like what you're doing in the same planet, in the same space is going on. Essentially, in a different reality, they figured out how to make Terminators in the first place without the original Terminator coming back. So they caused the apocalypse and they caused the future to happen. And so this guy comes back to a different reality, not his own, that's just a few, like 30 years in the past to change their reality and fix it for the future. So in these movies, you're seeing a different reality than the one that is existing with the apocalypse. And because they change their reality so that apocalypse never happens, it doesn't change the fact that the other one is still an apocalypse. It will forever be an apocalypse. But the one that they changes it so it never happened and never will happen. Because they're on two different timelines, it means that when he comes back and changes it, the Terminator just doesn't automatically disappear. It's because they're existing in two separate timelines. They're two separate things, but exactly the same. Yeah, that's how to make that work. Because so the other reality is always going to be messed up, and John will become the war hero that he's destined to be. And in the other timeline, they fix it so it never happens. And going forward, barring what I don't know about the next movies, John will grow up a normal life without the apocalypse happening. Are you coming to ruin our whole situation? What?
We all have.
What happened?
What's going on? You want me to come, don't you?
I think he does.
You have to show me something important?
Moose is right there. Everyone's here. Nothing's going on. Jesus Christ. Our cats are going nuts.
Well, there's something obviously going on.
Well,
okay. Anyway.
I want to see what his opinion is, and I don't think I'm going to watch the rest of this video.
Come on, do I look like the mother of the future?
The first film essentially subscribes to hard determinism. It suggests that time is pre-written. In other words, Sarah is bound to become the battle-hardened woman and not die at the end. Otherwise, John would never have been born to force Skynet to send the Terminator back in time in the first place. Terminator 2 refreshes and refutes the ways that the original film deals with paradoxes, and boy is it explicit. While the Terminator seems to subscribe to a level of hard determinism, in T2, Sarah quite literally scrolls no fate for us and the other characters to read. This of course directly relates to T2's narrative trajectory, which tries to pull off the grandfather paradox, getting rid of Dyson, or at least his work, in order to stop the future war from ever taking place. This ideology of no fate burrows deeper into Sarah and John. Sarah pulls it out whenever they're in danger, exclaiming to John,
You cannot risk yourself even for me, do you understand?
and John often explaining,
The future's not set.
Oh.
There's no fate but what we make for ourselves.
More subtly, this is also seen in Sarah's physical transformations, seen first in her bulking up while incarcerated in the mental institution, and later through her decision to take on a kitted-out military look. Putting this together, T2 clearly places far more importance on personal action and choice, sidelining the fateful ideologies of the first film, even if that means ripping apart the laws of physics to achieve this. Looking at technique, Cameron splits
but you
the
can
film
get
in half,
a logical
nailing a clear
reasoning
visual
from
divide
it.
between warm orange
Like if you
hues
just
and
reason
cold
it
blue
out.
hues. While this contrast between blue and orange has long been
Okay.
favourable in cinema, thanks to the colours being perfectly opposing, T2 employs these colour oppositions to help support our characters and their narrative arcs.
Oh, I
Used for
noticed
traditional
that. That's a
moves,
good one.
Oranges in the film
Yeah.
come at moments of intimacy and high tension, such as the trio's retreat in Mexico, or the film's final sequence, while blues couple with the cold T-1000 and accompany moments of emotional withdrawal and weakness.
Wow.
The film goes a step further, often including split lighting across one character's face, casting it in light and shadow, going further to
light and
reinforce the
dark.
inner divisions between good and evil.
Yeah.
These distinctive partitions in the film's
It
use
is a
of
good way
lighting
of
not only
representing
lend
it.
themselves to creating memorable images, but further underpin the narrative's thematic goals, turning Arnold's Terminator from this to this,
Oh, don't do it. Please, don't go.
I know now why you cry.
helping to achieve the film's ultimate goal of humanizing a machine that nearly made us pee our pants the first time round.
Yeah. I think it's a good,
In
like,
addition to expanding
complete
on the
story in that
philosophical
way.
discussions of determinism and choice, transforming and humanizing the main villain into a hero, and ramping up the action, T2 employs powerful narrative and visual techniques to ensure that the film's story beats hit twice as hard.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is a philosophy which permeates the entire film, from the VFX to the film's extreme action. Every moment is there to support the narrative, develop our characters, and reinforce its themes.
Yeah. It's a lot of
It
good
was
points.
inevitable that a Terminator sequel would get made. We wanted to make sure it didn't kind of drift off the concept.
Really
of
do
what it
appreciate
should be
how they
about.
make the
When it came to
cooler,
creating a
deeper
Terminator
scenes.
sequel, James Cameron didn't cut any
Yeah.
corners.
Darker.
This
And
was
the
not a
warm,
founding
heartfelt,
cashback,
emotional
but a
ones.
carefully planned out
Warmer.
sequel in this
Yeah,
terrifying
a lot of
sci-fi
movies do
world.
That shows.
Cameron
Well, I
had
didn't.
If you,
initially
like,
come up with the idea for Judgment Day
see it
shortly after the release of the
when
first
they
film in 1984. Yet it took until 1991 to actually bring the film to the big screen. He worked on Aliens and the Abyss in the interim, before Coralco Pictures finally bought the rights for the sequel. While the first film was a risky leap of faith that was produced on a shoestring budget of $6.4 million, by T2, both Cameron and his ideas for Terminator were much more established. This time around, the film had an enormous budget between $94 to $102 million, making it the most expensive to date, at 15 times the first film's budget. Cameron even joked that by that point, the original movie's budget wouldn't even cover Schwarzenegger's salary.
The way he goes about directing actors, how much time he spends with rehearsals, how much time he spends with perfection and with moves and gestures. That's why people always say that a Jim Cameron movie has a certain look, because it's a total representation of what he wants to see.
Armed with a fat budget and the classic Cameron ambition to raise the bar, the first draft of T2 was about 140 pages long and written over the course of 6 weeks. James and his longtime friend William Wisher went all in on this draft, saying that they put in every possible scene we wanted to see, even though we knew some of them would be cut for time and money. After a bit of editing, they pared the script
It's always
down
good to do that.
120
Oh, yeah.
pages.
More than less.
Even after trimming it down, the story was still going to be action-packed and very expensive. Co-producer BJ Rack took one look at it and recalled being horrified. Every sequence was like the ending of Die Hard. It was going to be one of the biggest pictures ever made.
Arnold and I working together, it's just like it was on the first picture. He's one of the most professional people I've ever worked with, and it's really a joy to work with him.
Perhaps the biggest change in the story between this movie and the last is with the Terminator's characterization. Cameron was somewhat surprised to see that more people connected with the big bad Terminator than they did with Sarah Connor. For some reason, people adored the villain,
yeah.
and Cameron didn't
I
really give
understand
him more of
that.
the same thing.
I mean, he
On top
has
of
a
that, Arnie's
charm to
newfound
him,
star
and
status meant that he couldn't
they do
be
give him
marketed as
comedic
just another
elements.
evil bad guy.
Yes.
It was a story
So-
decision as well as a career decision.
And he had
for
a
the sake
path,
of Arnie's
becoming just a
reputation.
robot,
Is
to
it something
learning how
worth
to
dedicating
adapt,
a year of your
becoming
life and
funny?
dedicating all of this
Yeah.
money and time and energy to show Arnold, who's looked up to by millions of kids, blowing up people with a machine gun? I say no. Cameron explained during a 91 interview. Many films guide you towards admiration of a violent character, and they can never recover from that on a moral level. Thus, the Terminator was reworked to be a hero and a father figure for John, and the story benefits greatly because of it. By taking this approach, it helped transcend T2 from just being another action flick.
Yeah.
In 1984, he paid a lot of attention to the acting. He pays much more attention to the acting now. So I would say that in that area, he's much smarter and much more sophisticated.
The process of acquiring new actors for the sequel was carefully calculated, as the roles of John Connor in the T-1000 had to be perfectly cast for the film to work. Cameron stressed how important John's character was, saying that he needed a professional, and he couldn't be working with an amateur new kid.
I didn't want him to be just some little jock kid that looked like he could handle anything. He had to have a quality that needed protecting.
Amazingly, this was Edward
Wow.
Furlong's first role. Initially, his lack of experience almost knocked him off the shortlist, but they gave him another chance, and he ended up being perfect for the role. Casting
good.
director Mally Finn explained
I
just
think
how
he's
difficult
pretty-
it was
Oh,
for the
yeah.
professional
I think
kid
he nailed
Good
it.
doing
to
it.
this tough kid role.
And when they tried to act angry or tough, it just looked ridiculous. It didn't look real. It didn't look believable.
When it came to casting the villain, Cameron was looking for someone with the opposite physique of Schwarzenegger, strong but with a more agile and dancer-like strength, as opposed to bulky
For the
bodybuilder
assassin
muscles.
type.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to find someone who would be a good contrast to Arnold, and I wanted somebody who won through different means.
And because so much computer graphics needed to be done, the role needed to be filled right away so that they could do all the composite shots in time. Early storyboards reportedly had the likeness of Billy Idol drawn in for the character, and there was a brief point in time where Cameron considered having the face of Kyle Reese plastered on the T-1000. While this was not Robert Patrick's first gig, he had been in Die Hard 2 as O'Reilly just a year before T2, his role as a T-1000 launched him into stardom. Patrick mentions that Cameron was looking for someone more unknown, so people wouldn't bring any preconceived biases to the character.
It was supposed to create some sort of an intense presence. And I started playing around with that with Mally, and there was something she saw, and she said, whatever that is, whatever you're doing right now, why don't you keep that going?
In the audition, Patrick showcased a calculating, threatening aura that became the iconic characteristics of the T-1000. For Schwarzenegger, this new Terminator required him to bring a more
Almost
sympathetic
like an
attitude to his
alien
role. He had to
persona.
essentially modulate himself to read less big scary villain and more awkward robot dad. It was Linda Hamilton, however, who had to undergo some really radical changes to play this more badass version of Sarah Connor. You can see right away that Hamilton had to really beef up for this role, and the regiment she went through is pretty damn impressive.
I trained for 3 months with a personal trainer, free weights, aerobics, up to 18 hours a week.
According to an Entertainment Weekly interview,
Dedication.
she also trained with an Israeli commando, Uzi Gal, and ate primarily skim milk, dressingless salads, and chicken. All this while taking care of her son Dalton, who's barely 1 year old at the time of filming. Quick fun fact, Hamilton's twin sister Leslie stood in for her during some stunt scenes, and was actually one of the forms that the T-1000 takes when trying to trick John.
That's crazy.
By now, I think I've made my point. The story of T2 is comprehensive and epic, but the story isn't the only great thing here. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the insane special effects work that went into this film. Though a few of the computer-generated effects look dated by now, Industrial Light & Magic's work still holds up after all these years.
It really
As a little
does.
bit of background, Industrial Light & Magic is a visual effects company that was founded by George Lucas during the production of Star Wars. Cameron had worked with the company in 1989's The Abyss, and would work with them again for Titanic and Avatar. Truth be told, the effects are still inventive and impressive, even if us modern moviegoers are used to CGI trickery by now. It's actually quite amusing to hear a contemporary special effects featurette gush that the movie has more than 40 different shots of computer images. But that was a big deal at the time.
The computer animators at ILM had the monumental task of generating more than 40 different shots of computer images.
To give it some perspective,
Back in
The Abyss had
1990,
only one CGI
it's
sequence,
a lot
but it
of
practically
time
derailed
processing
the whole film scheduling because CGI was still
for
such a new art form.
that.
Much of the film's sci-fi allure hinges on the special effects. Producer BJ Rack explained that the effects schedule basically drove the entire production. Sometimes we'd be shooting things so completely out of order that we might be shooting the first part of one scene 2 months or 3 months apart.
Computer graphics, if treated wrong, will show very hard edges. And on film, it just looks like a scrape on a car.
According to ILM Special Effects Coordinator Dennis Murin, there was a practical effects team on standby in case they couldn't pull off all of the CGI effects that they wanted. Stan Winston, who was responsible for the robotic effects in the first film, had created full-size T-1000 heads and arms in case they needed backup shots. Murin comments that a lot of these effects had never been done before with the robotics either, so if the computer effects had fallen through, chances are their luck wouldn't have been much better on the practical side. That isn't to say that Winston didn't bring his practical effects expertise to other areas of the film, of course. With a bigger budget, he was able to create more advanced animatronics and build upon the original Terminator exoskeleton.
You as an audience will not see the differences, but it's much more technically advanced than the endoskeleton in the first movie.
The battle sequence in the beginning is another fascinating example
just
of
on the precipice of all this
the
technology.
SFX team created exoskeletons and blended miniatures with full-scale sets.
The real trick is to not try to
birth
make
to
the entire
infanthood
effect
right
happen
now.
all at once. Break it up into component parts.
Meanwhile, the explosions are mostly projected into the background, while screens layer extra animations. It's also worth mentioning that those silver bullets effects actually weren't CGI. As you can see chronicled here on the Stan Winston School's Instagram page, that was actually a practical effect created using slip rubber latex and polyfoam.
What he has to do, now how are we going to do that? If you can do it with makeup, do it with makeup.
It does look very good.
If you can't do it with makeup and you can't do it with robotics, then in comes the magic of the computer.
The makeup effects are incredible throughout the movie as well. The prosthetics applied in order to make the Terminator's chrome skeleton and his battle-torn wounds are amazing. Winston actually comments that the makeup had improved so much since the last movie that they rarely needed to rely on animatronics at all.
The makeup effects on Arnold that we have, the chrome aspect of him, the underskin aspect of him, all of these things we learned from the first how to make them better.
Computer graphics
That's
animator
great,
Steve
really
Williams
great.
says that one of the most difficult things to do
with
was
lighting
create
and
the
stuff, you
illusion
can
of
make out
plasticity
all
of
that
the
look
T-1000.
even better.
One of the biggest problems in Terminator was to try and give an illusion of plasticity. Pieces of geometry were falling off, yet it was totally smooth and not showing any hard-cut lines.
One particularly challenging scene was the one where Patrick's character shifts through metal bars. This was achieved using computer-animated bars and a rotoscope computer-generated image of Robert Patrick that was laid over the actual footage of Patrick, creating the illusion of putty.
I mean, I even heard one guy sitting behind me go, I know they did that shot, they did it using jelly. In fact, it wasn't, but it was supposed to create the illusion of that.
And you have to start with storyboards. You have to know what you're doing at the beginning. Can it even be done? A show like this, is it technically feasible to even do it now?
Murin also notes that the process of digitizing film was relatively new at this point, so they had to figure that process out as well.
We had to figure out how we could just digitize film so we could do all the digital work we need to do in the middle, all the software, generation of images and all.
That's why
and then
everything's
get it back
digital
on film.
now.
That was a major hurdle.
Interestingly, Tutu would use
So
some
hard
early
film.
examples of mocap. While
It's
working
easier
on
to
the
make hard film
T-1000
into
walkie
digital and
scenes. The
vice
special
versa,
effects
and
team
back and
painted
forth.
a grid on Robert Patrick and used that to study his motion, and then went on to build animated bones and skin around it.
What was special about Terminator 2 was this was the first time we were going to marry these technologies. We were going to marry live action puppeted effects with digital effects.
And when an element of T2 worked up to a certain point and didn't work anymore, we were now in the digital world.
It was one of the final shots of the film, the T-1000 death scene, where he boils and burns from the inside out, that turned out to be one of the most difficult. That took weeks and weeks to render, Murin explains.
Whoa.
Some of the frames went down to Silicon Graphics, some of them went to universities across the country. We had connections with render farms here, render farms there,
Holy
and then we could
smokes.
finally put all those frames
So
together
much
to get
computing
that shot.
power.
Of course, the
it just-
practical effects and stunt work
the technology's
deserve just
so
as
new.
much praise as the CGI. I mean, the canal chase scene. It's literally one of the greatest chase scenes of all time. Not only is the scene exhilarating, but it also showcases some of the best stunt work ever and some very clever editing.
Yes, that is.
While it seems like the whole chase is taking place in one location, the scene was actually filmed across 10 miles. The set utilized hidden walls and concealed stunt ramps that allowed the giant truck to gain the momentum it needed to get all that air. The crew also had to build out a concrete divider for the truck to ram into, as the bridge canal didn't have anything like that. Meanwhile, the motorcycle used for the stunts was an actual Harley Davidson, not a lightweight stunt vehicle. You see, typically, there's a separate non-standard vehicle used for these kinds of risky jumps, but Cameron felt that switching out the bike would be too distracting, so instead of that, stunt coordinator Joel Kramer configured 2 construction cranes to suspend the Harley and stuntman Peter Kent in the air. The wiring was removed in post-production, and voila, you have an incredibly believable and realistic motorcycle jump.
Yeah, I can see the wire if I look.
And of course, this scene showcases some of the brilliant industrial light and magic special effects work when the T-1000 rises from the wreckage in his shiny liquid metal form. In the end, the shoot itself was quick by blockbuster standards, with principal photography taking place between October 1990 and March of 1991. From there, the movie was edited and rushed out pretty quickly in order to hit a coveted early summer release that July. The effects team for T2 won quite a few awards for their work here.
Well,
the film
yeah,
received an
I would
Academy
hope
Award
so.
for Best Visual Effects and Best Makeup, as well as a British Academy Film Award for Best Special Visual Effects.
For cast and crew, Terminator 2 has been more than a reunion.
Has been very intense to work, you know, a lot of night shooting and a lot of long hours and so on.
Did you see that?
There are some pretty compelling reasons that T2 still tops the list as one of the greatest action films of all time, and one of the greatest sequels ever made. It adds a whole heap of nuance to the discussions presented in the first film, recontextualizes the notion of fate, transforms the previous villain into an amazing father figure and unrelenting protector, transforms the previous victim into a Terminator in her own right, all the while introducing a new Terminator that is pretty much as anxiety-inducing as a T-800 cybernetic tank.
Come with me if you want to live.
Well, that's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit and subscribe to stay up to date on all my content. And if you have any other...
Go like his video. And I think we pretty much landed all of our talking points. Pretty much. Do you have anything to say? I did my little
I didn't
rant.
really... Until they pointed out where she had qualities or characteristics of Terminator, I didn't really notice it until they pointed out. She was loading up, fitting up, turning off, not really her humanity, by getting more, I must kill, I must eliminate. But
because she thought she was doing the right thing, and she thought she needed to raise her son to be like a strong figure going forward because he was going to be the leader to lead humanity out of the apocalypse. She's trying to build herself up so she's able to give him that knowledge to do it. And yeah, I think this video is perfect. It hit on all the points where more information was necessary. It hit on a lot of the extended scenes, which were really, I think, needed. I feel like a lot of movies do extended cuts. Just make the extended cut. Like for movie theaters, do the thing, and then for a DVD, just do the extended cut.
yeah.
Because someone's buying the DVD, they like the movie, they want to see more of it. Just do that extended cut. And sometimes people don't like the extended cuts, but I feel like more information is almost always better for an intelligent audience goer than just acting like they won't get it. Like pretending the audience is stupid, so we cut stuff out so they either don't get bored or they don't get it, or like other things. It's like you're expecting the audience to be of a low education or low, like they can't put 2 and 2 together. They can't get it, which I don't agree with. I think maybe that's the case, like in some cases, but I just don't agree with it. And even like if someone goes into a movie and says, I don't get it, that's not the audience they're going for in the first place. But if you liked watching the video, give us a like.
If we missed anything in this video, please let us know.
Yeah, please let us know. And thank you for watching.
Immersive Reactions.
If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. It helps us get recognition on our videos, and we'll react to more in the future. Thank you.